Hi, Daddy.
Rachel, how are you?
I'm good. I'm good. So we are about to try our first episode of a podcast that we want to do together. And this is a podcast that we are currently calling Father Daughter Memory Cafe.
That
So
is nice.
yeah, nice. I like the title too. I'm Rachel Minot, and I'm going to be speaking with my father. You can introduce
I'm
yourself.
David Minach.
Yep. And do you want to say a little bit more about yourself? Introduce yourself a bit.
Oh, I am reminded by Richie that um she's half my age. So a lot of stuff that I have gone through, she still has time in her life to travel the road. And I'm hoping that some of what I share with you will help you in the experiences that you face. Um, I'm raised in Jamaica and came to England 20 years ago and have a chance to see both sides of life in a first world and a third world country.
I literally had a visceral reaction to you saying we came here 20 years ago. Because I was like, no, we didn't. It wasn't that long ago. I'm too young to have lived in this country for 20 years.
Sorry, 19 and a
19.
probably a bit. And a bit. Who's
19 and
counting?
some
Who's
change.
counting?
Some change. I think it's
Yeah.
19 this year. I think it's 18 and change currently.
8th of August at
2003.
2:45,
2003, not the
2000.
time. Because you had like seconds counting down. It's like the clock in the
Who's
house.
counting? Who's counting?
Just
Who's
kind of
counting?
thing. I've just been chill, just been chilling. Um,
Yeah.
yes, I would like to point out that I reminded you that you are twice my age because it helps you remember how old I am because you used to forget all the time. And I had to be like, I'm 30 years younger than you. You were 30 years old when you had me.
It does help me to realize that even though you are my younger of two, you are a mature individual, and therefore I have the freedom of expressing myself as one mature individual to another. And the relationship we have is one where it has always been based on speaking the truth. So I have no problem.
Yep. There has been many a really interesting, tricky conversation about a very difficult topics. So it was interesting to see what comes out of the podcast. But essentially, I'm here to listen to your stories because you've got great stories. And you've also got, as we know, for many years, a great voice for radio. So we wanted to test that out.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I should have a bit of honey and lime.
Yeah,
Sorry.
to get
I
those
could
vocal
project.
cords. Mm.
So I could project. I've heard them warming them up. I didn't realize it was such. It's like a athlete going into to play football and stretching or running,
Mm. A
before they
fine
before they
instrument.
use it.
Fine
Yeah.
instrument.
So if we keep this short, I keep mine. They're
Protect them.
they're not that. I can talk for hours. Don't worry.
Okay, I know. um, but we wanted to do this conversation, this podcast together from different reasons. So before I kind of launch into mine, it'd be good to, what were your reasons for wanting to do a podcast together?
Well, the experiences I've had are varied and um, come from my childhood in Jamaica and some that I have since I've been here in UK. But um, the ability to share them before I forget them, and some of them are um, so so instrumental in shaping the way I see things and how I've lived my life that I've figured it to be an opportunity to have people listen to what I have benefited from or gone through and see if it can help or entertain them. So that is my side of it, and to have it recorded is like a legacy after I'm gone.
Yeah. And I'm really reacting to the legacy bit. Multiple reasons, I guess, personally. Always difficult to think of as a parent. Um, but also I work in heritage. I always worked in museums, and I work in an archive currently, and I think about that idea of legacy and the things that we leave behind, the stories. And I think there's something really beautiful that happens when people share stories, and something you see in museum practice and we believe in really strongly. And it does something for different people. So, the person who shares a story often processes something that's happened to them or something they remember. They find something new in it, or they find some understanding of their own experiences or some catharsis if they're dealing with something that was really difficult to go through. And then the people hearing the story might find like unexpected connections. They might find ways of thinking about experiences that might have been similar, or understanding that there is some universality to our experiences, um, even within the diversity. And then there are the people who understand you better, or they understand other people better. They may never agree with you, but having heard your story, they kind of understand your point of view. And I do think that's something that, in general, we're kind of missing, that opportunity of trying to understand each other and take the time to understand each other. Um, so yeah, that's what I'm hoping to get from the podcast, is just having an opportunity to share your story and seeing what happens through that experience. And then as your daughter, I just wanted to get a chance to know you better. Always, I think it's a absolute privilege to be able to do that and to have this moment with you that we can sit down and talk and I can listen. But like, we've been like ultimate collaborators for years. Like, can't think of an art piece I've ever made that hasn't like somehow been influenced by a conversation we've had. Or I'll tell you an idea, you'll get spark, you'll run and get me some random piece of material that you've been holding for ages, thinking that this could make a nice art piece for Rachael. And we somehow made something that neither of us would have made on our own. So I think that we've been longtime collaborators, and this is just the next project.
Well, this is the next project, and explaining this to my sister Ruth, I reminded her of our photo challenge back in the day, where you set me tasks to go out and take pictures. And it was very meaningful, and therefore I look forward to the same kind of interaction and meaningfulness coming out to this as well.
I love that. And yeah, I still have the picture of the orange that you threw in the flowers. It was the best picture of the challenge.
It's a screensaver on my phone.
Take an M&S style food picture of your lunch.
in the grass with buttercup, totally unrelated to the environment in which it came from.
I love it so much. It makes me laugh. Okay, so the format is we're going to check in. Probably in the future, we're going to talk about what we're drinking. This is a cafe idea. What are you drinking?
I'm having some number 4 Italian blend percolated coffee, reheated, drinking from my Falmouth mug.
Where did that one come from?
On a demo site somewhere. Somebody's canteen or cafe. But it was washed, and it holds the coffee. It holds a small amount. So when they have the overflow from the previous night's percolation, it fits nicely in this, so I can get a fresh batch following day.
Can you hold the camera up so I can see the picture of the mug? Oh yeah. Oh, that's actually really pretty. I mean, we've had this mug for years, but yeah, I've not really spent time looking at it. It's a fishing scene. That seems kind of familiar to Black River. Like now I'm looking at it, I can see. I'm drinking from my red University of East Anglia graduate mug. This is part of the alumni gifts we got, 2018. So this was my master's graduation. Unfortunately, the one you couldn't attend because you were still recovering. So Ed came with me and got me my mug because I wasn't really in a mood to collect things, and he was like, gave me a mug and got me some balloons. It was really lovely. And I'm drinking
Nice.
coffee. I'm drinking a mix of decaf and not decaf because I ran out of regular caffeinated coffee and then filled my cantina with decaf and then couldn't cope with it. So I mixed in some caffeinated coffee. It's trying to get me a little bit down on the amount I've been drinking. Yeah,
Good for you.
cool. All right. And then what story do you have for me today? Launch the podcast.
Right. Well, let's launch a podcast. Some of my early memories
Hmm.
would be based around animals and horses in particular.
Hmm.
Um, I was in primary school when somebody offered a summer camp for riders, for people to learn to ride. And it was an opportunity for mom to get me out the house. I was probably about 8 or 9 years old. And I went to Anna and Mary Ratcliffe had some horses on Hope Road. And they put me on it and showed me how to adjust the stirrups. I was so short that there was no buttonhole for the stirrup buckle. So they had to wrap it around the stirrup to shorten it enough for me. And it was a wonderful feeling to sit on top of a horse and have it walk around with me. And I went there continuously for a few years until I became competent after about 4 or 5 lessons, in that I could direct the horse, I could stop him and turn. And as my confidence grew and being able to control such a big animal as a small child, um, it was empowering for me. And also, they were gentle giants, which allowed me to show affection without being placed in harm's way. Um, yeah, so that was my introduction to them. And I've been away to Mexico, where my sister was at school. And I got myself a bridle, which allowed me. It was the only thing I brought back from Mexico was a bridle for a horse, but it was a very it's a curb bridle, and with that that item, I was able to ride even agitated and aggressive animals and be able to control them, which let me ride at almost every riding school in Kingston, where they had horses that were put up because they're injured and they couldn't ride them for a while and they're a bit frisky.
Mm.
I'd get it. They'd ask me to come and ride them, and I would. And I had a route where I would take them from Kingston up through the book gardens into the mountains by the reservoir and put them on. It's a dam actually, the Hermitage Dam, and run them around Hermitage. And if they wanted to bolt, there was nowhere for them to go more than in a circle. So I kept running them until they calmed down, and then brought them back to people. And I had a friend with me, Pileng. It was Sylvester Lang. He was a groom at the riding school, and he would come along with me. So two of us would ride up in the hills, and it was beautiful. It was green and nice, and people stepped out your way when they heard a horse coming, and it's some rural roads, all stone, no asphalt. And those were days of where I felt freedom. Later on in life, uh, a cousin got a horse and living in a government farm. the workers would send us to the shop for lunch, and they would give him and me one farmhouse from them and his horse, and we would race. We would race to the shop, and it could be quite dangerous because on a few occasions people had tied their animals and they would walk across the road. So there'd be a rope. They come around a corner and there's a rope across the road, and you'd have to adjust yourself. And we didn't use saddles at the time. Saddles were expensive. And plus, when we got them, we didn't care them, so they were rotten and they'd break and stuff like that. But it would be a genuine race, and the guys would start betting on us because they knew we weren't holding back. And if they got a new horse, they wanted to know whose was faster. And there was a special run that we do, and yeah, it was competitive and exciting, and such a sense of freedom, you know.
Who
So
used to win?
well, his horse was a thoroughbred, which this breeder in Jamaica had come to visit my uncle, that's Robert's father, Sam, who was an agronomist, and he had introduced a type of grass in Jamaica which was very high in protein for the animals. So we didn't need to bring in corn or imported concentrate to feed the animals because this was such a good grass. And he helped propagate this throughout the country. And this breeder who had the grass, and it was beautiful for his horses, was having a cup of coffee on the veranda one day and saw Robert, cousin of myself, riding a young cow over the hill. And he said, Sam, you don't have a horse for the boys? And he said, no, he doesn't. And the man put a yearling in a truck and sent him to us at the government farm. And there was a big stone paddock that we kept it in. And we carry feed. And while it's eating, one person will sit on the back and the other one feed him and pat her at the same time. And we tamed her with kindness. But she was fast. She was so fast that at the time, ex-race horses went to government cattle farms to round up cattle. So when a horse came to the farm, it would have been an ex-race horse, and they'd want to know how fast it was. So it let us race that new horse against his horse. And yeah, it was always close and it was challenging, but it was lovely. It was nice, you know.
What was the horse's name? Robert's horse.
Robert's horse was Duster.
Duster.
And she was so gentle. In the mornings, because it's a government farm, we didn't really have much space personally on the farm where the house was to raise the animals that Robert had, because he had a few cows and he would buy calves from the dairy and put on the cow. So one mother cow would have 3 calves sucking from it. And when he took them at night, he'd let them out on the government on the pathway to eat. And in the morning, we had to go for them before the rangers came and impounded them. So we'd have to get up early and go. It's a 1.5 mile walk to the end of the road. And when we go down there, it's all dirt track, 2 tire marks, one for each wheel of the tractor. Yeah? That's the width of the road, that tractor's width. And we'd walk down there and go for the cows. So when the horse joined them now, the horse would go with them. And it is early morning in Manchester in the hills, and it was misty. And you'd end up at 1.5 miles away from home with the cows. And one person would stop, would block the path for the horse. And other one grab a handful of mane and jump in the back with nothing on it. And she would fly. She would go bolting back to the yard until she realized the cows weren't with her, and she turned around and come back for the cows. And when she come back for the cows, we used to call it Apache style, where you just grab each other hand and throw them up behind you. Right? So we had it down to art. It was, and and she wouldn't leave the cows, so we didn't have to walk after we got the horse. We didn't have to make that 3 mile trek. We only had to walk up 1.5 miles and get the horse. And she was very tame and calm, and you could use your knees and talk to her, and she'd stop, and you can. She was trained with love.
Mm.
So she was his horse. So if a new horse came on the farm, he would ride his horse, and I'd have to ride the one that comes. And you don't know what you're getting. You don't know what temperament or nothing. But the right bridle, you could handle it.
And
And
you still have the one from Mexico at this point.
at that point, yeah, and that one, it's a curb chain, so you could stop them. But all you really wanted to do was be able to stop, because you couldn't run forever. So, yeah, so we'd race, and if we like the new horse, we'd find a way to get to borrow it. If both of us wanted to go for a ride in the hills, we'd say, give an excuse, we're going to the blacksmith who lived like 2 hills away, and you had to go through the bush, and we'd, get a reason to go and ride that horse. So yeah, it was a time as well where when you're by yourself on a horse in the middle of nowhere, I realized I did not have a singing voice. I had songs in my head that I loved, and I'd sing while I'm riding, but I didn't want anybody else to hear. And I didn't think I could really carry a tune. So I do remember songs from the Interschool Christian Fellowship, ICF, which was an evangelical group at school who were instrumental in teaching us about the Bible and Christian behavior, and how to seek redemption for our wayward ways at times. And the songs that they had were quite catchy. The tune, the beat was nice, and you could sing it by yourself while riding, and it was nice. It was spiritual moments while riding, So yeah, I kept up the riding for quite a while. And when you girls were born, I had 2 horses at the farm, and we had a little. I went to show off to him mother once, and jumped on the gelding with nothing, and he took me for a ride, and I stopped riding without anything at that point, because I was I didn't realize the danger when I was younger. But as you got older and had responsibilities, you realize you can't really play like that anymore. So yeah, it was good.
I imagine it would hurt as well.
If you fell off, it would. Yeah.
It doesn't hurt to ride a horse without a saddle.
No, it's on the strength of the knees. It's it. That's why people who haven't ridden and go for a ride walk funny afterwards, because the muscles that you need to hold on, you didn't know you needed them until you're riding.
That's probably what I had in my head, where I was like, "This looks like it's painful to ride a horse."
No, once the muscles are in tune, then it is beautiful. Yeah, it's a rhythm that once you and the horse are in synchronized rhythm, then everything is going normal. If by chance he bucks his toe on a stone, it will throw off his rhythm, and without a saddle, you will be set off rhythm as well, and that's where problems can start. But if everything is as it should be, it's lovely. Along a beach, galloping on a beach, that you have no obstruction, no unforeseen rises where you have to jump anything. You can get into everything. It's nice.
Yeah, you sound really like you're painting really beautiful pictures of these rides, like through the mountain, singing, and like along the beach, galloping.
Well, along the beach was one where when I had the gelding Duster, that's Robert's horse, he had promised me a colt. The first child of Duster would be mine,
Mm.
and she had a colt. So I got this young stallion called Bandit, and I didn't know what to do with Bandit. So I wanted to tame him to get on his back. So I decided to climb from the farm through Black River town to the beach where we lived, 2.5 miles. Got up early one morning. I'd never put a rope on Bandit before, but he'd follow Rock of Ages, old gelding, anywhere. So I jumped on Rock and I was riding Rock through the town. And as we passed by the workers' bank in the morning, Bandit, a young stallion, saw his reflection in the bank window. And he made the horse whinny sound and saw his reflection just as aggressive as he was. And I realized he was being kicked out the window out the bank. I had to jump off of the gelding, jump between him and the window, and make him know that it was a reflection, it wasn't him, which saved the window. But yeah, we took him over to the beach and took him into the water, rode Rock into the water. And when Bandit followed him to the water and was swimming, I could swim from one to the other. So he got a chance to feel what it was like to have somebody sit on his back. And that kind of calmed him down. That was nice. That's a good experience for me.
Rock of Ages is the one that we sat on. We didn't ride it, but we sat on it, right?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
actually always tells a story, or like my only memory of it must be Rock, where it was in our backyard and we had like three of us on it, and the person on the back fell off, and then they dragged me and I fell off, or I was on the back and I fell off, and I dragged the person in front of me and they fell
Oh
off.
Lord.
And then Ashley held the reins. That's the story she always tells, and she stayed on, and the rest of us were like collapsed in the heap underneath the horse.
I had you, Janet Francis, and Ashley on a donkey
Oh no.
at the farm under the cherry tree. And the
Okay.
donkey put his head down, right? And the person in the front was holding the reins.
Ashley.
And
Yep.
they went, and everybody came. Three of you came off of the donkey at the same time. But that was funny.
I
I had
haven't said
about
that in my
6
head before.
donkeys.
Yeah.
Yeah,
One of
they
them
were.
I got to name, right?
I don't remember. I had. I've I've always had donkey. There's pictures of me um, on the butcher's donkey at the farm when Grandpa took me down there, and Grandpa died in '73, so I was under 10. And I would love to go to the farm just so that we could get on a donkey, go sit on the donkey. And Mr. Maitland, the butcher, had a donkey, and I would just all out. Mr. Maitland liked me because that means that Grandpa would give him a choice animal for his butchering, and I got a chance to ride a donkey for the day while Grandpa and them talk cattle, you know. So and then the donkeys reproduced, and I end up with like 6 of them, and I would just come out my car and talk to them or walk through the pasture, and they'd all follow me like dogs. And you pat them, they're friendly, lovely. So yeah, it was, and they're humble. You know, there's a saying that says, "A patient man rides a donkey." Yeah, and it is it's emphasized by the fact, okay, because I've ridden horses, right? If you were to come across a steep hill because loose rocks going up a steep incline, a horse will go as far as he feels comfortable and then stop. Right? And he would refuse to go any further. You'd have to dismount and lead him over the hill. Whereas that donkey is not the smoothest ride. The gait is very jerky. But if you won't stop, it will go over the hill and down the other side. Because it's sure-footed and it's determined, you know. So if you're patient, even though the ride might not be the nicest and most luxurious and looks the best, you are sure to reach there on a donkey. And it's a patient man who rides a donkey.
That's lovely.
Yeah. And you know, it's an experience everybody should try. because as small as they are, they will throw you off as well when they're ready. When they've had enough, they know how they find a low lying branch and they go under it and you can't stay and they scrape you off their back. They know where it is. They find it. Orange tree. They love the orange tree. But the low branches in the orange tree, they just go right through there, put the head down and scrape you off.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so,
I think
um,
I think it's going to be interesting when we carry on these conversations about like the themes that are coming up. Um, and I know that we're not scared of having kind of tricky conversations either. But I would love at some point, probably not today, to explore the thing you said at the beginning about uh the fact that horses were gentle giants allowed you to feel display affection without being in harm's way. If we have space to talk about that at some point, I think that's a good theme to unpack a bit more as well. But it also seems that like each of the stories of different animals and also different settings with the animals, you've got different experiences and things that they've taught you, which is really beautiful.
yeah, I'm following up on the same horse theory while I still have you uh, on on my mind. In the summer, there was a riding camp which started at Demby, which is an agricultural show in Jamaica. Like we have the heritage show for agriculture here. We have Demby, which is a purpose-built showground. And part of the show was show jumping. And at the end of the show, this lady had a camp for a week. Um, and my parents would take me to the show on the last day with a bag packed to go on this camp. And this camp was up in the mountains of Stony Hills. And part of that camp experience was a ride from her stables up the Blue Mountains to Hollywell. And when we got there, we had to make our own corral for the horses using rope and tie them up. And the camping experience moved from being in a house, getting up and riding, to be outside sleeping where the horses are and having to deal with them throughout the night and then ride back the following day. And that was always a highlight. It was like the last day, 2 days of the camp. And it was youngsters, we're looking at 18 maximum, 16, 15, 14. I was a baby always because I started riding early enough and my parents allowed me out of the house, so they weren't afraid to send me at 12 for the first time. So, yeah, it was good. The horses were a lot of them ex-race horses who were brought up for jumping, show jumping. So they're well schooled, but were quite frisky. And on such a long journey, you would have chances to really race. And that is where I actually found the dam, where we went up to the dam for the first time. And then I realized at that point that if I needed to exercise a horse at full speed, that's where I could do it safely. Yeah. So following camps were in the other side of the mountains, which also took you back to Holloway. Everybody liked to go to Holloway because it's a dirt road, so the horses could manage it. But nothing beat the first time because it's actually further than the rest. They had a much longer ride, and nothing beats the first time sleeping out like that. So it was good.
Sounds amazing. Audio swapped, but I can still hear you.
I can hear you. You can hear me?
I can.
Yes. My headphones just died.
Yeah, but it died in the story, but you can hear it. You can still hear it really good. Yeah. It As an artist, every time you tell these stories, I'm picturing like these beautiful like paintings that could be of, under the stars or like through the woods. And
I tried to paint it with words.
You have painted it with words. It has been a beautiful painting of words. I've really enjoyed hearing the stories, and I think this has been it's been a nice experience, and I think it'd be great to see how this comes out as our pilot episode of our podcast. So we're gonna hopefully anyone who's listening, if you could comment or give some advice or any requests, it'd be great to get some feedback on how this was for you and things that you liked and things that we could develop, because we want to do something really nice together. We want to have a nice legacy to the podcast.
I'd love to be included in some comments, because yeah, it's a journey that we'd like to go on.
And we know we have lots to learn. So this is yeah, we're here to learn. So this is good. Well, thank you so much, Teddy. This is really good. I like the stories. I'm gonna try and see if I'm gonna draw after this. What experiences has brought up for me. But I'll see you next time for more coffee and stories. Take care.